welcome, and thank you, Administrator Johnson, for arranging for the coffee and bagels in the back. That was a very nice gesture on your part.
Very welcome.
So we will go ahead and get started. The first item on the agenda is a demonstration of WPB-TV. We're very excited about this. Tiffany, where's Tiffany?
This is wired up.
Did we lose Tiffany?
I do it from my desk.
Okay. That's great. Maybe she's stuck in
Make
traffic.
a grand entrance.
Yeah.
While they're bringing Tiffany in, Mayor and Commissioners,
Yes.
I want to just walk through here. As you will note on the agenda, we mixed a work session item with the Commissioners' onboarding and orientation. So after the WPB key demonstration, we're going to adjourn the work session, which is being televised.
Okay.
We don't televise the training and orientation. So I just want to make the board aware of that, because normally we don't have two together. So
Very good.
with
Okay.
that, Tiffany?
Good morning, Ms. David.
Okay, great. Hi, good morning, everyone. So I wanted to just thank Mayor James and the commissioners and Administrator Johnson, as well as the head of our information services, Mr. Paul Jones, as well as the other departments who worked closely with me to develop WPB Key. This morning, we'll be sharing about the need for a system like WPB Key, the benefits, the goals, and you'll get to see a firsthand look of what the customer will experience when they download the app. There's also a web-based portal, but I'd just like to ask if you could hold your questions until the end. We have our consultants, 3DI Interactive, on the line by phone. They wanted to be here with us today, but we had some issues with the dates, and so the CEO wasn't able to attend. But the team that I've been working with and that all of our departments have been working with during this process is on the line by phone, and they'll be available to answer questions at the end of our presentation. So at this time, I'd like to ask Paul Jones, Chief Information Officer, to join me here at the podium. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thanks for the opportunity to kind of give an overview. As much of a training, it's kind of an overview of this application and what it brings to the city. I also want to start off by thanking the mayor for his vision and insight in making this one of his top priorities, because really what we're talking about is customer service. And I think taking that to the next level is exciting and a big win for everybody. And that's what this application is going to do. And I also want to thank Administrator Johnson, whose direction, guidance throughout this whole process has been invaluable. And additionally, we worked through a lot of things to kind of stopgap the whole effort as we were making this happen. So thanks everybody, Tiffany and the team, for making this happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a quick kind of overview, the why, the need, the benefits of what this system really brings to us as a city. And then Tiffany's going to drill down a little bit more into the detail. So starting, what we want to talk about the need. Why did we need this? And really what we've done is we moved from a decentralized system to a centralized one. So what does that mean? Really what that means, and before I go any farther, I want to say, when I talk about not having certain things and not having this and not having that, it's important to understand that the departments had their systems, and in most cases they're really good. What we were lacking was an overall general system that gives us a holistic view of what the city is doing and what the city needs, and that's what this brings to the table. So when you have a decentralized system, one of the biggest challenges is who to call for what. I think if you talk to the citizens, sometimes it's well, I think this is the closest one. You have all these numbers, and then of course what happens goes here, well, that's not us. And again, they're not saying that derogatory, like, oh, it's not my job. It truly isn't. So sending it to the next person, and sometimes that can be multiple pass-ons. And so that's what the centralized system, one of the biggest things that it's going to do, one number to call. And that's what's important to remember, and then they'll direct those things. So there was really no overall incident tracking. Again, departments were tracking there, but overall, where are we? We could tell them, here are the number of incidents we have, here's what's going on with them. And so that centralized approach, giving us, again, a holistic view of what's happening to the city is absolutely critical. No overall updates. For example, what I like to call the black hole. Sometimes things would go in, and as it got passed around, where did it end up? It went to the black hole. So obviously somebody wasn't getting an update. So things weren't happening, weren't regular, weren't consistent. And it's just like any customer service. If I go somewhere, what do I expect? I certainly expect a follow-up. I expect to know what's going on. And, of course, our citizens do, too. And this will provide that. No overall updates. You put something in, well, what happened? Again, there's the black hole. So what this system will do is provide automatic updates. I'll talk more about that on the next slide. And you know, one of the big initiatives in addition to this is data. You know, we have all this data, and what the goal is to turn this data information into information, and then from that information we glean knowledge, and we fix things. We make them better. We improve them. We do it based on really solid evidence and data, and that's what this will give us too. You know, one of the benefits of having good data is you can be proactive. You can do predictive. Okay, what's going to happen? Where is this happening? Again, if I get the same call from a bunch of people, then we need to make a change. We need to adjust. We need to adapt. Again, also it's kind of interesting to go say, I need more people, because the first question is going to be why. And this will either prove or not prove that. And it should be. We should be able to say why. And that's what this is going to be. And service improvement. Again, when we engage those citizens, which I'll talk more about, when they're a part of a system, then I really feel like we all win. Okay, so the next thing we talk about, what are the benefits? Of course, the benefits are exactly opposite what I just talked about not having, right? So the first thing is a single point of contact. You got to have one number you call, and we determine where that goes. Again, we're not removing the systems that have been very effective for the departments. We're just providing that overarching call-in. And that's critical. Again, we want the citizens, one number, I'll get you where you need to get. I'll get you the information you need to get. Streamline issue reporting. And this is not only for us, but it's really critical for the citizens or any stakeholder that's reporting an issue. How easy is it to put in an issue? Now we'll have mobile, you'll be able to do it on the phone, you have multiple ways of being able to input an issue. And I think that's critical, because the more difficult you make something, the less you're going to get what you need to get. And then we have real-time notifications. And this is critical, because communication has to be two-way. If you put something in, you got to expect an answer. Now, some things take a while, but still, knowing it's in the process, knowing what's going on. So the real-time notification, every time there's an update to that ticket, that person will get a notification, which is just huge. Again, it just really keeps that engagement. And then, in addition to that, there's a portal. If they don't get a notification, I can go in and see if there's been an update or what's the status. So it really gives a lot more avenues to communicate and to facilitate what we're trying to bring to the table. Continuous service improvement, I talked about that. The more data we have, the more we know what to do. We know what actually, and again, it's not based on what ifs. It's based on facts. And that's the key to successfully making sure that we're doing the right thing. Because it's always, it's always important to remember, when we're doing something, we're not doing something else. So what's more important? And this gives us a good look at those things and those items, which I think is very, very important. And last but not least, in fact, probably the most important, improve citizen and stakeholder engagement. Again, if I know I'm part of a system and I'm part of something and I see what's going on, I'm getting responded to, and I know things are happening, it's huge. It makes a big difference in the customer service. Like I said, anytime I place a service call somewhere, I certainly expect, and it's the expectation today. It's not the nicety. It really is an expectation. So overall, again, when you look at moving from a decentralized to a centralized system, you've got the overarching single point of contact, the overarching, okay, where all the data is. And so that gives us the ability to really, again, manage it. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over now to Tiffany and let her drill down a little bit more in actually the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So this is where I get, maybe like the mayor would say, a little bit in the weeds. What are the goals of WPB Key? Well, first we have, okay, let's see if this goes. Did it go? A positive customer experience. We all answer phones. We all go to community meetings or other types of environments where we'll interact with business owners or residents or even visitors. And when people call the city or they have an inquiry, we want them to feel good about calling the city. We want them to know that when they call the city of West Palm Beach, someone will help them. And this isn't to say that this wasn't happening before, but now we have a more efficient process to encourage that to actually occur and document it and track it. We'd like to provide meaningful data. When I first started at the city, I received a lot of calls about tree trimming, right? And, nobody's trimming the trees. And I felt almost like a detective to figure out, well, how does this tree trimming stuff actually work? And as it turned out, we have an amazing tree trimming team in Parks and Recreation, and they're responsible for all of our trees and for a number of other trees. And so once I understood that, I could convey to the customer that actually those are your trees to trim, they're on your property, or I can make sure that you're in touch with the appropriate people to get your trees trimmed. But on the other side, the person who runs that department didn't have all the information to say, well, here's the list of all the trees that we need to trim this year or month or, and in addition to the calls that we're getting where people see an issue with block stop signs or something that would need attention. So when we have that information, we can say to Todd Snyder, we can say, okay, well, it does look like you need, 3 or 4 more people on your team in order to address this large volume of requests that we're having. And a single point of contact. How many of you are familiar with 822-2222? Yes, raise your hand. Okay, great. So we will still be using that number, but we'll also be using the WPB Key app as well as the WPB Key portal, which is accessible from our website. We wanted to make sure that people who may not be as comfortable using a cell phone or using an app to submit their request had a way to get a person on the phone, but it's all going into the same kind of box. So whether you submit your request by phone or online or through the app, the service provider or the department will have visibility on what those requests are. The customer experience. This type of program can kind of, flourish or not be as successful based on how the customer is engaged at the first look, right? So this is the first page that you'll see on the WPB Key app. If you look, you'll see where it says create new request. So you press that plus button and then a screen comes up, which I'll show you next, that says, here's what I'd like to do. Here are other comments. You can upload a picture and then you can submit your request. But you'll also see a few other things here that are focused on paying a utility bill. Apparently, most of the calls that come in here are around paying utility bills or setting up a utility bill or understanding, why my utility bill is so high. So that was what we learned during the beta testing in terms of, what kinds of calls are we getting now that we're entering them into WPB key, like what are the highest number of calls? Jobs. People want to find out how to work for the city. And so we listed all of these things kind of like in an order so that when you look at the app, you can get to the issue that you'd like to see quickly. And these lead back to our website. This is a service request screen. So you would put in your location. Again, if you've answered the phones for the city in any capacity, we often get calls from people who actually do not live in the city, but they believe that Mayor James is their mayor. They've seen him on TV. They've heard him at a meeting. And so they call the city to make a request that we address an issue that they're concerned about. If you are using the app or you call the city and you speak with a customer service representative and you give the address, and it's not actually in the city, we'll be able to tell them, I'm sorry, sir, this address is not in the city. You can call the county or the state or your representative to have this issue addressed. And so that will definitely cut down on the amount of time our staff spends explaining and transferring while not even knowing whether or not that issue is actually in our city. The case contact is where the customer would put their contact information. This was an issue with like changes in code enforcement and in some other areas where there's a state law that says that you may not make a request anonymously in terms of code enforcement. And so we had a little bit more digging to do in terms of whether or not we could allow anonymous reports. And if someone would like to have a certain type of follow-up on their request, we will reach out to them using whatever contact information they provide. And that was kind of the consensus in terms of speaking with other groups around the country who've implemented this. Sometimes people are uncomfortable leaving their name and their number. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't respond to an issue that may be having a negative impact on livability in our city. Then select maintenance request type. This one says boat ramps. So I worked with Paul's team and with the different departments to identify who would actually get which types of requests. And so in some departments, they chose to have a general email address where the department would divvy up or assign the request to a certain person. And then in others, they would have it go directly to that individual. You may also add a picture here, and then you hit submit. So what happens after you hit submit? This is the notification screen on your app. You will be able to receive a notification if you sign up for it, right? So it won't be like ding, ding, dinging on your phone. But if you sign up for push notifications, you'll get them as things change regarding your request. There's another screen where you can see all the requests you've made. So whether it's open or closed and what the status is, you'll be able to see that from the app or in the portal as well when you log in. This is for you all. This is a commissioner report. And this is a sample commissioner report that features the top 5 cases by district, average resolution time, so the time from when the call comes in to when it's resolved. And this is a sample, but it is reflective of some of what we've heard in terms of cases. I think that one says like 168 water utility services, right? So this report will be generated on a monthly basis, and we'll be sharing it with you and your team so that you're aware of what's actually happening in your district as opposed to anecdotal, even though those are important too, but so that you can say, well, here's what I've heard from our residents through WPB Key. Is that an issue for you? Or, sometimes they're issues that appear larger than they really are because there's someone who's always talking about it as opposed to a higher number of people who are experiencing it. And then this is, have you heard the expression, the tea, like spill the tea, or it's not my cup of tea? I spoke with the CEO of 3DI. His name is Rajiv Desai. And it just happened in our conversation. He mentioned the T. And so here we have the T. T stands for transparency. And by transparency in government, he refers to inclusivity of information. And that's like that we're all working from the same pot of information. We all know how the process works and what the expectations are. Efficiency is the E, right? So focusing on how, where permissible, we can use technology to make government and service to our citizens more efficient. And then lastly, and I would say that this is the hardest one, accountability. Because, accountability goes two ways. There's accountability for us as city employees and government, but then there's also accountability for citizens and for business owners and residents as well, that like we're being kind of honest dealers with each other and that we're also accountable to kind of do our part as residents. I say as residents because I live in the city too, but we're required to do our part as residents in terms of reporting, trying to be in compliance as we look at how to make our city more beautiful and more livable and safer. So with that, I'd just like to take any questions. Again, we have our team on the line. This is the 3DI team. 3DI, are you on the line? Hello? Okay, great. With us, we have Dawn Christoph, who's the director of the Engage platform, Guru Bhat, Engage implementation, Pratik Desai, implementation lead, and Amit Singh, who's also an implementation lead role. And I can't say enough about this consultant team. We started our beta testing and opened a sheet for issue reporting. And with any system that's based on technology, there may be things that may not work exactly how you thought they would. When our customer service reps or employees saw that there were, buttons that weren't working, or when they put something in, it didn't show up how they thought it would, I would reach out to this team and they would turn it around fairly quickly, test it, and then get back to our staff and our team related to what the resolution was. And if it took a little longer than they thought it should, they would also inform us of, well, we need some time on that, let's see how we can resolve it. Are there other things that you think may work? They pulled from their experience with other cities to give us advice on how we could resolve some issues that came up. So for that, I say thank you, 3DI, and ready for questions.
All right, before we go into questions, let me just publicly thank you, Tiffany, as well as the other members of the team. This all emanated from a very simple desire of mine as a new mayor to upgrade our 822 system. Now, I had no idea, as Tiffany says, I don't generally get in the weeds, but I had no idea what it would take to do that. And so, Tiffany, thank you, Paul, and all others involved to get from that simple request to where we are. I mean, we've been working on this for months, close to a year, maybe?
Yeah, about a year. We started with understanding what our processes, like what processes were in place already. And then before we put the RFP out, we developed a requirements document that was informed by our team, so by our departments and staff members who would be responding to the cases. Also, we interviewed cities around the country. In other places, this is called a 311 system, and so we interviewed them to find out, kind of who were the parties that you worked with, and what were your successes and challenges in selection and implementation? We had 11 proposers for this proposal.
Yeah, so, I wanted to make, still want to make, our city more responsive to our citizens, the businesses that here. At the end of the day, we are a customer service agency, all right? We the city, we serve the public. So I wanted to, my vision was to make us more efficient at serving the public and giving us as a city the tools to do that more effectively. And so I think that this is exciting for me to actually go from a simple request, probably wasn't very simple, but a request, okay, it wasn't simple, okay, a request to actual implementation of an idea. And I think commissioners, hopefully it'll help you do your jobs better as you represent not only people in your district, people throughout the city. And I think of it as having, in effect, we talk a lot about community engagement. What this will do is, in effect, welcome the community to engage with us, even when it's not like a formal program or anything like that, because now there's a tool where we can hear from them in real time as to what their concerns are, what their issues are. And as Paul says, we'll be able to use that data, hopefully to be more proactive as we're designing programs or priorities, et cetera. So I'm very excited about this, and I'm going to get off my soapbox now and let you all kind of engage with questions. I did want to publicly thank you, Tiffany, and the rest of the team for bringing this to where we are today, to reality.
Thank you, sir.
Request, not a simple request, and making it reality for our city. And I think it's going to make us, I don't know of any other city in the county that's doing what we're doing with this. Maybe they are, but I think we'll be one of the leading cities in this state that's engaging with this. And as we are growing, I think that's just another arrow in our quiver to show our citizens and the businesses that are here and that are looking to move here that West Palm Beach is in the 21st century. So we'll open up for Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. Should we just ask one at a time and then go around, or just ask all our questions?
Well, why don't we rotate it, and then we'll see, because I'm sure you all have many questions.
Well, and I first want to say thank you, not only to the team, but also to you, Mayor, because I remember being on the transition team and 822 being a constant conversation. And so thank you for listening, and thank you for being open to really discussing and how to make this and implement this. It's really exciting, and I know it was a constant conversation, and I'm really excited for our residents and for myself to be able to utilize this tool. So going to the contact information that you said, I know that there was the asterisks on there, and so it is going to be required, because I do think that is somewhat of a limitation, because I do have residents who kind of get nervous about putting their contact information.
We can accept requests without contact information, but we won't be able to follow up with you and tell you what happened. I think they may be able to call in anonymously and give a number, right? And then we could look up their issue or their request that way. And I'll ask 3DI if I conveyed that properly. Don, are you on the line, or Pratik?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, so
I think, Tiffany, too, it matters which request we're talking about. What exactly is the nature of the request? Some requests can be anonymous and some cannot.
Mm-hmm. Based on
depends on how
law.
you guys. It depends on how you guys want to set that up too, and it's also all subject to change over time, because you may start with something not being anonymous, having anonymous, but saying, hey, now we can't do that, or vice versa.
So it'll be dependent on the toggle then on the bottom?
It would be dependent on the service request type.
Okay.
So right now, if you want to call and say that your neighbor's grass is too high, you need to leave your name to report that, right? Like to have a case created for that. But if there are 5 people who don't want to leave their name and they call to say there's a drug dealer on my block, you can leave that anonymously, right? But we would be we would still capture your concern. Sorry.
Okay. Again, why don't we just work around? So, Commissioner Baduzzi, did you have a question? And we'll.
A quick follow-up on Commissioner Ward's question. So if we could just, you know, in an effort to be very transparent with
Yes,
people,
yes.
if there can be some sort of an asterisk or something that's there on a code enforcement issue that says, under Florida statute,
Okay.
you must we must ask for your contact information in order for us to follow up on a code enforcement issue, so that there's no question. And that they understand why we're asking for it, that they don't have a choice because it cannot be anonymous.
Okay. President Fox?
Thank you so much, Tiffany. This is fantastic. I have several questions, but my first one, I love having the report every month come to us so that we
Okay.
are able to understand what's happening in our district, who's calling, especially if this might take some of the calls away from our office directly, if people know that they can utilize the service. But I'm wondering, will there be any backup for us to, let's say we get the report, you know, click on it and see, like, not just, I think some of them are probably self-explanatory if they call and say the utility bills are too much, but like other categories, it might just be interesting to know if there's a specific thing that's happening in our district, like widespread, so that we understand, rather than just the word utility bill, or parking or whatever. Parking, what's the issue with parking? You know, that I might want to open it and say, okay, something's broken in the garage and they need to fix it, or, you know, something, just so that we can understand better if it's a widespread issue that a lot of people are having that we should be aware of, rather than just someone thinking the utility bill is too expensive. Just wondering if there's a way in that report to like click on it so we can actually see the backup.
You mean like the actual request?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
There is a
Thank
way
you.
to do that.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you, Mayor. Not to be overly dramatic, but I want to give a standing ovation to this. Like this is tremendous. And while I know that maybe the RFP started a year ago, I remember when Administrator Johnson came on board, and I was literally flooding her emails with requests from residents. And at one point, she's like, Commissioner, whoa. and we came up with the smart sheets. And that was a way, and it was an okay way. But this is, as you have said, into the future. And I am just so grateful because, I was thinking about our budget discussion the other day and how that was really about the quality of life and what we're spending our dollars on for improving the quality of life. And I really started thinking about this is about the administration and about communication and about one of the topics that you had up there, Tiffany, was improved citizen engagement. And I think something that we deal with a lot is dispelling rumors or trying to help rumors not get started in the first place. And communication is the number one way to do that. And so thank you to the team who worked on this. Thank you, Mayor, for your leadership on this. My question has to do with, I'm grateful to see, that was kind of like a bonus to see that there are other items that are on here, not just opportunities to provide feedback or complaints or questions, but to pay utilities. I do feel like there are other, I guess, activity reporters. The one that comes to mind is like the homelessness activity reporter.
Right.
And I don't know if that is also integrated into this piece or not, or where do we draw the line as to all of the things that we could add on to here?
That's an excellent question. And so when I spoke with the consultant team, I said, we have all of these other things, right, that customers use and believe are efficient in getting their ideas and concerns across. How do we message that we will be using WPB Key? And the answer was, well, once they start using WPB Key and they see the ease and the level of communication, those items can still kind of exist, but they'll see that it's easier to convey their concerns through WPB Key. And, there may be people, you could decide later that you want to sunset those, but right now, HCD has a service request. They have service request items in WPB Key, and they have people assigned to resolve those. So not to duplicate efforts, but again, it's dynamic. So as we see that there are more people using WPB Key versus the homeless tracker, or we have another system that takes in, sanitation requests, look, as that user number increases, that may be the time to have the conversation. Okay, well, like, what do we do with this? Or does it still make sense to maintain it? How are you deploying your staff to respond to these versus what comes through in WPB Key? So again, growing, learning, being more responsive.
And I think it's important to know that this tool will be modified. It can be modified as it is used, right? So this is not just what you see today as what it will look like a year from now. We're using it to learn how to be more responsive to our citizens and what's more efficient as a city. So, Paul, I think you want to say it, but you need to go to the mic because, we're taping this.
I actually was going to echo what you just said. And with the exciting thing when you get into and you develop something, that the exciting thing is just what's happening here. What about this? What about that? That's the world. And by the end of this year or next year, it'll be a different item. There'll be a lot of things added to it. And again, that's what's exciting about it. And the homeless, we certainly can add all that. Because again, when we get back into that centralization, the more people can get going one place, the better off we all are. So it'll definitely grow.
And I think we also have, correct me if I'm wrong, Tiffany, our consultants on contract to help us as we are trying to modify this for at least another year or 2 years or something.
Yes.
So, we have the subject matter experts, the technical people that will be helping us to incorporate these changes as we move along.
And one other point, Mayor, and to the commissioners and Administrator Johnson, is that, I said, what typically happens after this first rollout in a city? And, I mean, he may be biased, but he said, people want more. He said, they want to know what else can we put on the platform and put in people's palms or, at their computer that we hadn't thought about. I think about it in terms of, like, if we had this during COVID, how much easier it may have been to let people know about food drives or employee assistance or housing assistance that was available. So there are many options.
Very good. Wait, somebody behind me? Okay, Commissioner Warren?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I echo what my colleagues have said. I think this is phenomenal, and I applaud your vision and the innovation that it took to bring something like this forward, because this is certainly the direction that our society has gone in the way that people communicate. So we want to communicate with them in the way that they like to reach people. So certainly great initiative and wonderful action that has been carried out in order to make this happen and to get to this point. And I don't think that this will be updated like real time. And if so, would we be able to provide like alerts that are on that link when people go on, if they, instead of them having to go to the website, if they see that there's some emergency communication, that information may be readily available there through their app? And would it be able to create an issue number if someone has something that requires follow-up?
In terms of emergency response or separate?
Separate. If someone has an issue that they're reporting, that they're entering in, if there's something that requires follow-up,
yes.
Would it be able to create an issue number for them so that they would be,
Yes.
instead of them
Waiting to get a push notification, if they could call and inquire about their number? Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's make our way around again. Commissioner Peduzzi?
Thank you. you know, a lot of us, when we receive citizen inquiries, they will send us photographs or documents in support of whatever it is they're asking for assistance with. Will this platform have the ability to upload photos, docs, things like that in support of the inquiry?
Yes. And mapping, which for me was a real plus, right? Like you can see on the map by case type or, you know, day, month, what areas are experiencing a certain type of service request or inquiry.
And then we could use that data to be more proactive in what we're doing. I mean, if we see, for example, a lot more illegal dumping complaints coming from a certain district, then we know that maybe we need to be more proactive as a city and coming up with solutions to address that. But which is just an example.
I also wanted to mention, again, if you've answered the phone or you get emails from the public, there are often instances where the same person may call about the same issue at the same address, but because we sit in different places, we can't see that they've already called or that they may have received an answer or that the issue has been resolved. And so because it's based on location, there's a way to join complaints or to join concerns. So if I'm calling about 401 Clematis and my neighbor calls about 401 Clematis, we can see that there were, 8 calls about 401 Clematis, but that's not generating more work for Mayor James to respond to. He still has to respond, but at least we're aware that this is an issue that is amplified based on the number of people calling about this particular address.
Commissioner Ward?
And so this is kind of double. So just going off of what you just said, the monitoring of that aspect, because my next question was going to be about resolution time and how that's calculated, whether it's initial complaint or if it's calculated based upon initial response to the complaint. But then who is going to be overall monitoring and then giving that data to either the mayor or the administrator and things like that?
That would be me right now.
Okay.
And in terms of what you're referring to is like the service level expectations, and we are gathering that information as we go, right? So when you submit a request, you'll immediately be notified that your request has been submitted, right? And then when it has been assigned to the person, so it'll move through kind of like a queue. If they have to call you or they need more information or it's resolved, you'll get that alert as well. The question about the timing, we often deal with issues that, I need this pothole filled, right? We have a process for paving and, so the service level expectation for that particular request may differ based on where that street or the type of pothole, if it's like a safety issue, or where it lies in terms of the paving program. So, and those are questions that can be answered once we know what the area is and what the concern is. And just to caveat this response in terms of, people may not always be happy with the response, but they will get a response. And so that's where I think, we're doing our best as a city to be responsive, but also understanding that we need to manage our resources wisely.
You brought up a good point about that pothole situation. So if there's multiple people, so when we're getting our reports, that's what I was thinking about was that you had a category on there that was the resolution time. And so I was assuming the trigger is someone went on the app, someone reported it. That starts to click the ticker for day one into when the problem has been resolved, not necessarily the response, but the resolution of the problem.
Closed.
What if, yes.
And by that we mean closed. Not,
but what if there's like 5 different people who've reported this? One person did it, a few months ago, and it does take a while for I mean, there's tons of things in the city. It's not going to be overnight, but how are we going to be able to ascertain, okay, well, this person, Jane, said something in April, but Joe said something in January and it really took this long. So how are we going to be able to ascertain in that data final resolution of the problem from the original complaint versus when it was finished?
If it's a complaint that comes in at a different time but related to like the same area or address, they would be linked.
Okay.
And so even that first one versus the one that came in 4 months later, if, you know, it took 4 months to get it filled, then that's what it would reflect, which I think is part of this accountability piece, right? Sometimes it takes a lot longer to get certain things done based on the parameters of the request.
Awesome.
And I think it will also help us as policymakers understand how to communicate the process to our constituents, so that we hopefully can educate them as to what it takes to get a certain segment of a street paved. Again, as Tiffany said, it's not always going to be the answer that they want to hear, but hopefully they will respect the fact that they are getting an answer on a relatively timely basis, which is now. And if that in and of itself produces blowback to us as the policymakers, then we can have discussions as to what, if anything, we can do to change that policy. But it is at least coming to our attention. It's data and not anecdotal. President Fox.
Thank you. What's the anticipated timeline for the launch? And I guess how do you anticipate, what's the rollout look like for communicating with people?
Excellent question, Commissioner Fox. So we are set to go live publicly on the 19th and of September, yes.
Okay.
And so we'll be sharing information in the water bills. Mayor is doing PSAs. Our team in communications is recording how-to videos. I know everybody has a phone and you have apps on your phone, but being able to like watch a video and see, well, this is how you add your concern or your request, I think will be helpful. One thing that I left out in the presentation that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is that the WPB key is available in English, Spanish, Creole, and Portuguese. And these are the top 4 languages that are spoken in our city based on the most recent census. And that too, I think, is something that we can say as a city is making our delivery of services more inclusive.
Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. Would it be possible, while this is ramping up, to get regular updates of the data? I don't know if it's after the first quarter, or maybe we can sit down and talk about, okay, what is this telling us? Is there a way that we'd like the data to be reported?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are going to get monthly reports, and based upon that, give us feedback as to what works, what other information you might want. And we don't have to wait for an open meeting like this. If you want to send an email to me or Tiffany, and we could see what we could do. Yeah.
Great. And so I saw that we'll get monthly reports on our own district. Will we be able to see the city as a whole?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we'll have a dashboard or something that folks can access, but
We can put the same information together for the city. So it wouldn't be for District 5, but citywide. Here are the things that people are.
Right, because I think that would be helpful to see if there are trends across the districts, as well as I imagine there's a number of issues that come up that aren't necessarily district specific. Maybe, I guess, a resident lives in that district, but maybe it's, more of an administrative question. I'm not sure, but that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Tiffany. Do you know what type of alerts the system will be able to provide to people, what type of notifications we may be able to send out? And I'm sure that will probably change
In terms
as we move
of
forward.
their submissions for requests or driven by the city?
Driven by the city.
I would say that we can provide alerts, but we wouldn't want to interfere with the alert system that emergency management already has in place. So I would look to Mayor and our emergency management and Administrator Johnson to direct whether something should be included as an alert on WPB Key.
But we do have the ability to
Yes.
do that as we
Yes.
move forward.
Yes, yes.
But we do have another, I forget what it is, Code Red or something like that we're working on to.
Chief is back there.
Okay, so that's really going to be our primary vehicle or platform for getting emergency notifications out, right, Brent? Chief?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back around. Commissioner Baduzzi?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to briefly follow up on the pothole issue or lifted edges on sidewalks, any of those things that could potentially cause the city liability. You know, in the state of Florida, we have a duty to warn of any known hazardous conditions that exist on the premise and to make them safe. And now we're going to be put on notice, and the notice requirement is that you have liability potentially if you knew or should have known about it. Now we're potentially documenting this, which is fine, because the ultimate goal is to do the right thing and make sure that things are safe for our residents and our citizens. But I think we just need to be cognizant of the fact that now we are documenting, and that for safety type issues, there'll have to be more immediate follow-up.
We have in the system, when you put something in and it's indicated as a safety issue, it is directed to Tim Scott, who's our safety officer. And, before what would happen is that they'd call the mayor's office and say, something almost happened to me walking on sidewalk or something, and then I would call Tim Scott. So I think this may be, again, more efficient in that we know that Tim Scott will get the email alert that says, please send someone, and he's really responsive. Like, you see him coming out with his jacket and the cones, and he makes sure that those areas are secured when there's an issue that's related to safety.
And also, there would be evidence of when that ticket is closed.
Right.
So from a legal standpoint, we can at least show
That
what action was taken and when that action was taken, and that will be documented. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Commissioner. Commissioner Ward.
Going back to our 3DI consultants, does it look like? Obviously, I think, Mayor, you said that we have them for another year, but obviously apps are always requiring updates. Is there somebody internally that is our apps person that knows what they're doing, that's going to be able to maintain this going forward and trained on it? Well, this is just easy yes.
Two things. One is we'll maintain a support contract with 3DI
Absolutely.
going forward
Okay.
as well. But yes, our analyst, Jamie Gummeyer, is actually been working with Tiffany all along on all the technical aspects. So we'll definitely be able to cover anything that comes on. We pretty much now know how to do workflows, how to manage those things. And again, with 3DI, who have been tremendous partners, we'll continue to work together.
Great, thank you.
President Fox.
Thank you. I'm curious, do you anticipate that, in the past when we had the commissioner inquiry system, if we got calls in our office or emails, we would just put them in there? Do you anticipate that being the way we should be working with this? For example, people will still be calling us directly or emailing us or calling our staff. I mean, are we then using this system to just transfer all the information that we're getting and the questions we're getting so that
Yes.
everything is in this portal? Okay.
Yes, I think, again, and I will go back to transparency in terms of inclusivity of information, but also of access, right? So often people may call the mayor's office or call the commissioner's office when they believe that they will get a different answer than one that staff has provided based on the information that is available. When someone calls, say, the commission office, and one of your team members answers the phone, they can feel free to say, did you know that we have WPB Key? You can enter your information there, or I can take your information now and enter it into WPB Key so we can get your issue addressed. In other words, there's kind of a leveling of the playing field. You know, I know my commissioner is Commissioner Peduzzi. I know how to reach him. But that doesn't mean that if I didn't know him, that I shouldn't have an issue that I wanted to have resolved, properly resolved, efficiently resolved, with the attention that everyone else in the city should get. So that is one of the goals.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. Again, extremely excited about this. And I just am hearing everything you're saying and about the consultant's response that people are going to want more, they're going to start using it more. So my question is to Administrator Johnson regarding our staff capacity to be able to handle these. I hope we see this as a more efficient way to handle them, but I'm just curious if we anticipate, you know, how we anticipate handling these requests.
In terms of staff capacity, we've not built in automatically increasing staff. I think we are going to get experience with the system and then have the data to drive whether or not we need additional staff. So it's just going to have to evolve as we get experience with it.
And frankly, it's like anything else in the city. As the need arises, we as an organization, we adapt. And so, but this gives us the data to support that pivot if we need to make it. I mean, we are in the customer service business, have been in the customer service business, and we'll be using this data to make us more efficient as an organization. If it means we need to get more staff in a particular department because there are more requests or demands for services in that department, now we have that information to help us make that decision. I'm sorry, did you have a follow-up?
Just a quick follow-up to that is just I presume we're doing training for the staff as well, who will be the ones who will be responsible for applying.
Yeah, we have done,
We've trained over 100 team members within the city, and training is available for new employees in City Edge. And if people have questions, they can reach out to me or Chris Darrell, who's well-versed in the system.
Great. And we have some pretty tech-savvy new commissioner aides in our office, but I presume either you've trained them or you will be training them as well?
Yes.
Okay, that was one of my questions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you, Administrator, when I was making the rounds.
I've been checking off your questions that line with mine, so.
You're not shy, so I'm sure you would have said something.
No, shy is not one of my characteristics.
Commissioner Warren.
I don't have a question at this time.
Commissioner Administrator Johnson, do you have any questions that we have not answered at this point?
No, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Peduzzi?
Yeah, just in follow-up of President Fox's question with regard to utilizing this similarly as the commissioner inquiry system was used before, that this will replace all those systems, which I think is a good idea. Will there be any method of knowing when something is input by our staff, our commission staff, versus directly input by the public, just for purposes of us maybe receiving future notifications of the status of an issue?
When the employee puts an issue in, it's noted that it's being put in by an employee and the contact name with the contact name attached. So if I put a case in, you can sort all the cases that I entered, but that would be a different search than searching for cases for Joe Schmo, right?
Thank you. So will you then, if you put an issue in for a constituent, will you then receive notification of the status of that issue or the response to that issue?
You'd be able to check it, because once you put the issue in, it is channeled to the person who's responsible for addressing it.
But there's also a method, though, for the constituent to receive the feedback throughout the process.
But if you wanted to have one of your commission aides run a report of all of the issues that they input into WPB Key and to see the status of those, they'd be able to do that.
Okay, but there's no method that's similar to the way a constituent receives updates for our staff to receive those same updates on an issue.
Not that I know of, but I'll ask 3DI. 3DI, did you hear that question?
Yeah, we heard it.
Okay.
First off, let me point out before we go any deeper, it is a case management, so every action is in an audit. We know who put in what, when, where, the whole 9 yards, and who touched it during the whole process from intake to resolution. So that's within the system. I guess the thing is that if two people wanted to know what the status was on a particular case, we could attach the two of them together so that they both are informed of it. Sort of the parent-child type of situation. In other words, you don't have to, if there's a tree down in the road, 10 people do not have to put tree down in the road so they can be notified. When you make the request, you're notified automatically. You can just say, I want to be notified, but no, you've already said there's a tree down in the road. Somebody else has already reported it.
Mayor, brief follow-up.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think so. I'm just more concerned of
So
it.
you can have multiple people being notified of a particular case, but only one person really needs to put the case in.
That I understand. What I'm trying to get at is that as a commission department, we receive issues, or individual commissioners receive issues, and if we're putting it in on their behalf, the constituent now is considering that we, as the commissioner or the commission office, is acting on their behalf, and they're going to look to us to make sure that it gets resolved. And if we are updated as to the status, or at least that their issue was resolved, that's going to make it easier for us to deal with our constituents.
But the constituent gets notice.
Guru,
They don't need to call your office to find out what's going on.
When they put this in, they're going to put, obviously, the person, if I'm calling into the commissioner's office, they're going to put Dawn's name and address and blah, blah, blah in the system, right? Say, this is the person making the request. What they want to do is have the ability to sort of tag a button to say that the commissioner's office A did this, so that they're both getting notified at the same time.
But if a constituent calls us, let's say it's an elderly constituent or a constituent that doesn't use email, they may not receive the same type of notification that I would receive as someone who's a little more tech savvy. And they may look for that phone call from someone to say, hey, it looks like your issue's been resolved. And as opposed to, we sent you an email a week ago, didn't you get it? And if they don't have email, or they don't look at their email regularly, or they can't see well, or whatever, that's all I'm getting to, is there some redundancy to make sure that the constituent feels like their issue has been heard and resolved?
I see where you're going, sir. What I'm pointing out is that obviously we have to, if Mary Smith is the person making the call, right? We have to put her information in as the person making the call, right? That you want to contribute that, but you also want the commissioner's office that is handling the call to be notified along with Mary about that same case. Is that a fair assessment there?
Yeah, I think that would make sense. And I mean, it probably is not necessary in every case, but I could see some times where that would be helpful in handling follow-up calls from a constituent that may not have read their email.
And even if you get that follow-up call, there's a way to search for that case number.
You could search by address or by the person who's calling. And the other thing I think that's important is that you can say, I'd like to be notified by phone. You know, I need someone to give me a call back in terms of like the next step or the status, and their number would be attached to the case.
So sometimes when you go to websites, they ask, how would you prefer to be notified? So if we could incorporate something like that in, that I'd prefer to have a phone call, a text message, or an email, that'd be great. And that would solve my issue probably with it.
Okay. I'll deal with the consultants if that isn't already included as a way to request a notification. I think it defaults to email or push notification.
Commissioner Ward?
As a follow-up to that, because sometimes when they're, if there is an issue and they're calling us, it's more pressing that they want to know that we're responding. And I think that's why it's great to have the commission aides at least being able to notify, because and then more times than not, it's multiple people on the same issue. And so if somebody else calls the same, day or a couple days later, that commission aide can look it up and say, well, somebody actually already actually reported this, and here's the step. But you're saying that they can actually search, regardless of them wanting to actually put in something in the data, that even if it's a different commission aide, they can search. What are you talking about? Oh, this corner, let me look it up. And it'll know, regardless of if they weren't even involved at all in the intake at all, they can still search on a general level.
They can still search on a general level. They can search by their name. So if I took a call or someone said they talked to me, because this happens often, I call the city. Well, who did you speak to? Oh, I think I spoke to Administrator Johnson. So if we type in Administrator Johnson and this person's name, we'll see, right? Like if she actually did talk to them.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah. And
Okay.
now on the other side, the resident that's putting in the data, are they going to see when they try to put something in, FYI, your neighbor's already reported this?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll have that notification on both.
It looks-
So just because we only saw one page screenshot of the initial, there's going to be the same amount of data entry and capabilities on the app than on the website portal,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it mirrors it.
Okay, and now my actual question was, this whole tea thing, is that actually like there's going to be a section where it's like, get the tea, or this is just marketing?
No, this is just a concept that I learned of from the CEO of 3DI, and I thought that it was applicable to what we're doing here today.
Okay, all right. Well, I liked that concept. All right.
Me too. I like to
President
spill a
Fox?
tea, cup of tea.
Thank you. This maybe is getting into the weeds, but you mentioned it a little bit that sometimes people call, let's say, about trees, and then it turns out it's not the trees are not the city responsibility. I know this is different in a lot of areas in terms of lighting as well. I get a lot of calls about lighting being out, and it's not ours, it's FPL. And then you also mentioned about if somebody puts in an address and their property is not actually in West Palm Beach. I get a lot of calls about that as well, that people call me because their address says West Palm Beach, but they don't
Right.
realize that they're not actually in the
Right.
city.
Right.
So I'm curious if an example of any of these things that they put in a light bulb is out and it's not ours, it's FPL, or they put in a property that's not in West Palm Beach, or they put in, one of these things that is actually not our responsibility. Will they in some way get a response back that we got your inquiry, but it's actually not our responsibility? I'm just curious if it's just.
When they put the address in that's not in the city, an alert comes up that says, this address is not inside the city of West Palm Beach.
Perfect.
If they put in that a street light is out at a certain address, that is rooted, I think, to the public works folks again, so these are all the different layers. I don't want to misspeak, but it's rooted to the appropriate person who is in contact with FPL, who'd be able to figure out, is that a city light or an FPL light? And if it's an FPL light, I've seen instances where our team will contact FPL on the resident's behalf and try to resolve it that way. But let them know, like, this isn't our light. We've called FPL.
Okay.
Here's who you can talk to or deal with to
I
get
just
that.
was curious if it was not going to be lost in a black hole somewhere if it's not our responsibility. So
Well, we kind of, I don't want to say cut them off at the pass, but really, like, if you can't enter a request because it's not in the city, there isn't any other follow-up that needs to be done. When our 822, Chris Darrell and his team, they tell people, I'm sorry, that's unincorporated Palm Beach County. Here's a number where you can reach them. And that happens all the time.
sure it does.
All the time.
Thank you. Perfect.
Commissioner Lambert,
I have no further questions, thank you.
Commissioner Warren.
And this isn't where citizens will enter an emergency, correct? So if they go to enter something like that, will it say?
There's no way to enter and call 911 if this is an emergency. Yeah. There's some instances where people have issues that they'd like the police to be aware of, and then we have the sergeant or captain, I think it is, whose office would receive that. But it's not emergency. Yeah.
Administrator Johnson,
None, Mayor.
Commissioner Peduzzi.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any additional questions, but I did want to say, since I didn't say it before, thank you. I think this is a tremendous program that we're bringing on, and that it'll help us to represent our constituents more effectively and efficiently. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward,
No further questions, thank you.
President Fox.
No further questions. Thank you so much.
All right, and don't see this as the last time that you could provide input, ask questions about this. This is an evolving platform. Again, I'm extremely excited about the potential of it and what it could do for our ability to provide improved customer service to our constituents and the businesses. Any final words, team? Paul, Tiffany?
The only thing I'd like to say before closing is that we have a phenomenal team of professionals at the city. And I am honored to be able to work with all of the different employees in the departments, Paul and his team, administration, in order to bring something like this to our city. And I think this service will illuminate how awesome our employees are and how much they care.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Warren, did you have a, oh, okay, I thought I saw your hand up. Administrator Johnson, did you have anything else to add?
No, no,
Paul,
sir.
you're approaching the microphone.
Just
so.
in closing, I want to echo what Tiffany said, and just some of the questions about the processes. We have a really strong project management process. In anything like this, I think we right now have over 8 upgrades, 8 major implementations going on right now, and every one of them goes through the project management process, which is training, which we know testing, which we know we need all these things to make this thing and get it to where across the finish line. So I just wanted to, just add that and assure everyone when we take something on like that, we're doing it very methodical and hopefully well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Lambert?
I just want to say thank you to that, because often that's the type of team that doesn't get the recognition. They're doing all the behind the scenes work. But if that team did not work seamlessly, everything else would fall apart. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tiffany.
Thank you,
Paul.
everyone. 3DI, thank you, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you all
Bye-bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay. We'll take a few minutes to transition.
Yes, Mayor, we're going to adjourn the work session
Yeah,
and get ready for the board's orientation and training.
okay.